I've barely made $2,000 this quarter. I've had to sell some investments to pay my rent. And yet I've never been more sure that I have made the right choice. Hey everyone. Tuesday, March 17th of this year marked 4 years since I freed myself from the shackles of my corporate job. 4 years is a decent chunk of time. For the same duration that I was an undergrad, I've been frolicking around Mexico City, perfecting my Spanish, and waking up every day to the joy of being alive. How have I survived without a regular paycheck? And more importantly, have I learned anything that's going to be useful to you? It's mostly been a dream, but this year my quit my job anniversary comes at a particularly difficult time. As I mentioned, I've barely made $2,000 this quarter, not even close to my personal goal of getting 15K in income. And selling my index fund investments to pay my rent makes me feel like I am failing at being an adult. Then again, I did take 6 months off of client work to launch my second book, get it funded on Kickstarter in just 12 days, and get featured in the New York Times. Still, it's hard to see the beauty in all that I've accomplished when reality is currently kicking me in the arse. Last week, I was hit by a family emergency, causing me to fork out another couple of thousands of dollars to fly to LA and say goodbye to my grandmother, who seemed like she was on her deathbed. I sat with her in the hospital for 5 days as she went through a heart operation, reflecting on life in a mortal imperative kind of way, while somehow helping to nurse her back to health. It was a close call, so not every day is sunshine and roses. Sometimes those deeper existential questions still irk me. Am I really much better off than before I burned my New York 9 to 5 life to the ground back in 2022? But then all it takes is a 5 minute conversation with another software engineer who hates his life to knock my own sense back into me. I've definitely made the right choice. I'm not in the same place in this creative career as when I started. My direction is clearer and narrower in a more motivating way. I have a product to sell, I have workshops to teach, my path has a lot more shape to it. But it's not easier. In fact, I'm still suffering. Yet, I am following the advice of Graham Weaver from my favorite episode of Lenny's podcast, where he says, life is suffering, so make sure you pick something worth suffering for. That's how it feels right now. It's a lot of work, but I'm much happier doing this than sending Sean a stupid, boring spreadsheet. And if you remember, in my corporate tech career, I have worked with more men named Sean on my teams than with women. So here are 4 lessons that I have learned in my 4th year of freedom. Lesson 1, money still doesn't really matter. Yes, I'm a hypocrite. Aside from keeping the lights on and paying my rent, I still believe that money doesn't really matter to me in my life. Through much self-reflection, I've learned that making money for money's sake means nothing to me. I only make money to fund my creative projects and have control over my time. I personally could not give a shit about owning a home. Sometimes I wish I had a bit more disposable income to travel, but that's about it. At the same time, the highest of highs in my life cost next to nothing. Creating the intimacy journal in the second half of last year was pure creative bliss for me for months on end. Designing the pages, curating the erotic poetry, I had never felt so alive as I brought that book to life myself. Same with meeting up with a special group of incredibly talented poets and writers in Mexico City. Reading my work to them, experiencing their work, and feeling held creatively is absolutely fucking amazing. Enough said. Lesson 2. There are doers and there are dreamers. The other day, I was talking to a guy who planned to sell shoes from Mexico in the US. What shipping service are you using? I asked him. Well, we actually haven't done it yet, he said. We're just developing the idea and exploring our options right now. Huh, I thought. So he hasn't even faced the real issue, which is that shipping stuff from Mexico to the US is not easy at all. Correos de Mexico, the Mexican postal service, isn't permitting anyone to send more than a postcard to the US these days. He doesn't know that they just digitalized their inner system as well, and they charge a shit ton more to send anything else. Got it. Something that continues to carry me through these years is that when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. Many people stand around commenting, they're saying that what you're doing is cool and that they're doing it too, but then they don't actually do it themselves. You also don't realize how much you will grow through this whole process and how much you will learn. I look back and I'm like, oh shit, I fulfilled 99% of my Kickstarter orders. I hosted those workshops. I've done a lot of things, actually. And I've learned a lot too. If you have also been doing the things, you probably know a lot more than you think you know. By doing anything, you're already way ahead of someone who hasn't done anything at all. The same thing goes for reading books. A lot of people don't read any books these days. Even if you just read a book for one page of one book, that's infinitely more than someone who just goes around saying how much they'd like to read more. Do you see what I mean? Everyone talks a big game. When someone tells me about their dreams, but they aren't actually actively doing them, I kind of tune out. But when someone is actually doing something, even if they suck at it and they're failing, I respect them a lot more for that. Lesson three, always be selling and show, don't tell. If you bump into me on the street today, I will be carrying two copies of the Intimacy Journal. One is the sample copy, and the other one is a gift wrapped copy in this plastic sleeve. Why do I do this? Well, when people ask me what I do, I don't tell them. I pull out the sample copy of my bag and I show it to them. And I read them a line or two or a short poem. I show them the pages that I designed myself, and I tell them the story of how the book came about. I'm really proud of this book and I think it's beautiful. So I enjoy watching people interact with it for the first time. What happens after that? Well, unexpectedly, they often want to buy one. And that's when I sell them the gift wrapped copy. This doesn't always work, but I've sold 42 copies of my book this way. It's about $1,250 in revenue for me. And that's over a month's rent. Plus, people often add a little tip, and it's nice to have some extra cash on me sometimes. At times, it can get a little exhausting, and I feel torn or guilty if I'm not carrying around copies of my book with me whenever I go out. But I did sell 4 copies at my friend's Christmas party. And in fact, the last thing that I did in 2025 was sell a copy of my book to a lovely gay man at a New Year's Eve party. Neat, huh? I keep track of how much they pay me in cash or in Venmo and PayPal, and which currency they pay in as well, whether it's pounds, dollars, pesos, or euros. Now, let me tell you a true story. When I was a teenager, my family lived on the same street as the esteemed English fashion designer Sir Paul Smith. He was knighted by the Queen years before. I only saw Paul Smith on my street a couple of times because he wakes up at 5 a.m. every day to go swimming. But one day, I ran into him and I asked him how he was. He immediately said to me, "I'm excellent, thank you. I'm just picking out the furnishings for a new shop that we're opening on Albemarle in Mayfair. You might like to check it out." His words left an impression on me. He's perhaps the most famous designer of men's clothing in the world. His clothes are on billboards. He has shops in Tokyo and on Melrose in LA. And he's been designing collections at Paris and Milan Fashion Week for longer than I had been alive at that time. As a 16-year-old girl, I wasn't exactly his target demographic. And yet, here he was, imploring me to check out his new shop on Albemarle. I never forgot that he said that to me. And believe it or not, I did visit that new shop a few months later. And I did like the furnishings. Look, you're not one of those obnoxious guys standing there with a big sign flinging around at a car depot. Don't do anything tasteless. But if someone asks you what you do or what kinds of things you write, it's about 1,000 times cooler to show them a beautiful book that you've created yourself than just about anything else. Lesson 4. Focus on one thing at a time. One thing that has changed my life in the last year was deciding to only focus on one project, the Intimacy Journal. The world is a wide, complex, and distracting place, and each of us only has a very limited amount of energy each day. When you work on 5 different projects, that energy is spliced out in 5 different directions. It leaves you too discombobulated and distracted to rise above the noise, and you need to do everything that you can to rise above the noise because you're competing with everyone else for people's attention. If you put out all your energy into one project, you have a chance of breaking out of your little bubble of people and reaching escape velocity and giving your project the impact and momentum that it deserves. Still, I wrote the odd article and kept my newsletter going every single week, but I concentrated all of my energy into the journal. It was the launch, it was the Kickstarter campaign, and the printing. It required a lot. And yes, I became a significantly simpler and more boring person, but everything was way more defined. And I found that I made progress a lot faster. My friends came back from their summer holidays, and I already had the first printed sample of the book to show them. A project like the Intimacy Journal is just like a pillar. Once you have the book done, it opened up so many other revenue streams for me. Workshops, collaborations, podcast interviews, books and audiobooks, etc., and even translations into other languages. I got a photo of me holding the books in the New York Times as well, which was pretty cool. Things just happened because I sat down and got that book done. Whenever you feel that tug, that desire to ship this thing out into the world, and you're excited about it in a deep way that makes you come alive, you just have to fucking do it. Because, like Elizabeth Gilbert talks about in Big Magic, trust in the meticulous truth that new and marvelous ideas are looking for human collaborators every single day. Let them know you're available, and for heaven's sake, try not to miss the next one. The idea is yours for now. And if you don't do it, the book, the song, the poem, whatever it is, it will find another human subject to occupy soon. You will lose it, and you'll wish that you did it yourself. I hope you found these lessons insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even helpful. I seem to have driven home the point of being a doer rather than a dreamer here again. If that echoes what I shared in my list of lessons from last year, that's because it's proven to still be true. I hope also that when I'm sitting here again with this list next year, I'll have survived and thrived through this emotional roller coaster and this dip in my bank balance. Don't forget to do something fun today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.